The 162nd edition of the Royce Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Nate Humphrey hands King Rice the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered by Vinny.
With 20 seconds left to play, goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul.
Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Royce Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Royce Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony back with you. And we got a win to talk about. Carolina gets back in the win column. They save their season for the time being with a dramatic 66-65 home win over Notre Dame on Saturday afternoon inside an empty and vacant Dean Smith Center. That really, Anthony, this was a big game for Carolina. I put it out when we released our preview article that you don't really have a lot of must-wins in college basketball in the month of January, but that's where Carolina was entering this game. Had they lost the game, they would have fell into 5-5, 0-3 in ACC play, and it would be really hard to see this team regrouping and making a run at the NCAA tournament. But as we kind of preferenced when we previewed the game on the podcast, you just need to get one win. You don't know what that one win can do for your season, what this one win can do for this team that is extremely young and they're learning how to win in the tough and one of the better conferences in college basketball, which is the ACC. And they got that win on Saturday. No, it wasn't pretty. No, it wasn't easy. But at the end of the day, a win is a win for the Tar Heels.
Yeah, that's how you got to look at it. I mean, this was a game that for Carolina, you didn't play your best basketball by any stretch. It wasn't even the best game that they played this season. But you know what? This is kind of what the ACC is turning into this year, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you are one of favorites to win the conference, like Virginia, like Duke. It doesn't matter if you're one of the lower tier teams that people don't think really have a chance to win the conference, like Georgia Tech, like Notre Dame. Every game is going to be tough in the ACC this season. We talked about that multiple times, and this is a game that shows you that. And Carolina was tougher down the stretch, and you really got to hand it to them because this is a Notre Dame team that is a better group. You have Prentice Hubb, who's been on this team for a while. He's a senior. Nate Wazowski, a guy that's been around the program for a while as well. This was a very similar late game situation to what you saw when this team played Georgia Tech. You knew this team had more veteran guys been in this position before, but it didn't matter. Carolina's talent was able to take over. You saw it from Day'Ron Sharpe. You saw it from Owen Walton. And these guys were able to find a way to win this game. No, it wasn't pretty, but it's a win, like you said. And that was the biggest thing that we were focusing on coming in. Just win one game, and you never really know what can happen. The problem is that it was against a team in Notre Dame that's struggling, and there were still a lot of concerns, so it's hard to be overly confident with what you saw. But at the same time, it gets this team on the right track. It gets them in a better state of mind after, a struggle to start the ACC season. And there is some hope that this team, as of right now, can still put together a pretty decent resume and at least make the NCAA tournament, if not, compete at the top of what is just As I've said multiple times on the podcast here early in the season, a ACC that nobody right now can figure out.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything what you just said there. And look, Roy Williams, and we're going to talk about his post game here in a minute, but he has an old age saying that everything looks better when the ball goes in the basket. That wasn't the case for Carolina on Saturday. The case for them and why they won is because it looks better when you don't turn the ball over. Because they only shot 35% from the field, which not really good. You very rarely win basketball games in the ACC shooting 35%. But they committed a season low 8 turnovers, and this was after committing 4 turnovers at the first under 16 timeout of the first half. The rest of the game, only 4 more turnovers. And that's what we've asked of this team is to just, if you don't turn it over, you're good enough to give yourself a chance. And I think that's what this win proves to them. Now, granted, did they have to scrap and claw and fight harder than they probably wanted to win the game? Absolutely. But you didn't turn the ball over, so you got good results because you were able to get good looks, get good shots. And look, Carolina's best offense is their offensive rebounding game. So basically their best offense is a miss and go grab it. They did that at a really great rate on Saturday, 21 offensive rebounds, only got 18 second chance points. But without those 2 numbers, Carolina doesn't win the game. But they also don't win the game without Day'Ron Sharpe. And, the move in the starting lineup, I think in the season we thought if he was going in the starting lineup, he'd be replacing Armando Bacot. He has been moved in for Garrison Brooks, and he was the best player on the floor for Carolina. 25 points on 9 of 19 shooting, 7 of 9 from the foul line, and 9 rebounds. His physicality is something that Notre Dame couldn't handle. Now, because Notre Dame, they're a little more of a modern team where they play with 5 guys that want to play on the perimeter. They're big men. Now, granted, Lazewski had 25 points, but he made 7 3-pointers. Like, he's not a typical big. They couldn't handle the size, strength, and intensity of Day'Ron Sharpe. And I think that's the thing about when we talk about Carolina is that, the perimeter play is not great right now, which we all understand that, which is why it's good that you've got all these guys dump the ball into the post. But, Day'Ron Sharpe, he's looked the best freshman post player since Tyler Hansborough, and he's, turned himself into the best player on this team, in my opinion. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's hard not to agree with that. It's what he's doing, offensive in the glass. And again, you got to realize that the numbers haven't really been overly inflated because he is rotating with 2 other guys that are coming off the bench down low. So, no matter who that is, if it's Garrison Brooks not starting, Walker Kessler hasn't started a game, so that's one of the guys. Or for some reason, Armando Bacot wasn't to be on the floor. That's the thing. That Carolina's doing a really good job of balancing their big. But yeah, I think at this point it's pretty clear that Day'Ron Sharpe is probably your best. I would say he's your most talented player. I would think right now, just from the consistency that we've seen from him, I would say Armando Bacot is probably your best player right now. But look, the thing, we were talking about this earlier before we got on air here. It's very clear that the 2 best big men on your team are Armando and Day'Ron Sharpe. And it's kind of shocking because last year, and heading into this season, we did not think there was any way that Garrison Brooks would not be one of your best big men. It just didn't seem like that was possible with how well he played. But, he really hasn't been on the same level as he was last year, and we've seen some guys that have really stepped up. And yeah, it's great to see what Day'Ron Sharpe is doing. But the other thing is there's also some things that he still got to work on. Definitely, you can tell. There were a lot of second chance opportunities that he wasn't able to put home, that Bacot wasn't able to put home, and that's the one area where Carolina's got to be a little bit better. Because there were 3-4 times where you had 3 or 4 attempts to put a rebound in, and either couldn't finish or would finally finish on that last attempt. You got to be a little more consistent with being able to finish with those second chance opportunities going forward, because there's not a guarantee that you're going to have a bunch of games like this where you're going to be able to get 3, 4, 5 offensive rebounds on one possession. That's just not something that happens that often. But still, yeah, you got to feel really confident with what you're seeing from him and from Armando as well. He didn't play great the other day, but still playing really, really well as compared to where he was this time last year. So, I mean, I don't understand anybody that still thinks that this team needs to try to play at, perimeter basketball. They need to have 4 guards on the floor. I don't see why that strategy attracts people all that much with the way that this team is built, because every time we see this team play, we see where the most success comes from, and it's inside.
Another thing that came out of this game is that Carolina, for the second consecutive game, started with a new starting 5. This game it was Caleb Love, Kerwin Walton moved to the starting lineup, Leaky Black, Armando Bacot, and Day'Ron Sharp. Kerwin Walton gets his first start, 12 points, 4 of 8 shooting. All of his shots come from behind the 3-point line. I think this might be Carolina's starting 5 moving forward until Anthony Harris is cleared to play, and you would imagine at some point he moves into the starting lineup. Something that the announcers really made a really good point of in the ball game is that since the loss to NC State, the 2 games we've seen Carolina since then, the loss at Georgia Tech and then, of course, whenever Notre Dame, is that Roy Williams isn't playing as much with Caleb Love and R.J. Davis together. They're usually playing opposite, whether one's on the floor, one's on the bench. And I think that's benefited them both, because I think R.J. Davis, believe it or not, works better with the ball in his hands as opposed to moving without the basketball. Now, granted, his offensive game right now is struggling. He only scored 3 points on Saturday, 1 of 6 from the field. All of his field goal attempts were 3-pointers. That's something that's got to change, but he looks better on the court. What do you think of the move from Roy Williams to kind of separate those two and play them, individually on and off the floor?
Well, he said that the reason that RJ did not start the game was because he was 35 seconds late to be, to the pre-game meeting, I guess, that they have. Make sure that everybody's there before they go out and start getting ready to put up some shots for the pre-game warm-ups and everything. But I don't know. I mean, I find it hard to believe that you're not going to be putting a guy out there, Kerwin Walton, that's been playing as well as he has. And I think, at this point, R.J. Davis probably is the guy that needs a little bit of time off, off of the starting lineup. Maybe coming off the bench will help him out because he's really struggling. He's really struggling from the perimeter. That 3-pointer that he hit in this game, to be honest with you, if I'm thinking right, that's the first 3-pointer or first perimeter jump shot that he has hit in ACC. It hasn't been his strength here when they've gotten into conference play. He's taking way too many outside shots, and they're not going down for him. So maybe coming off the bench would be a confidence booster for him. But I find that interesting that that Roy said that. Didn't mention anything about the fact that Day'Ron started over Garrison. So that looks like something that is going to stick forward. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think Garrison's a guy that, still, he'll play with motivation. This can motivate him even more. And he's also a guy that is not going to complain about his role. If this is his role going forward, this is his role. And he's not going to complain about it. He'll be okay with it, and he'll still be able to make the most of it. I hope that's the mindset that R.J. Davis takes if he goes on the bench. I think that right now that's probably the most productive lineup that you can have out there. I think, the only other option would be to start Andrew Platek, but we've talked about that on here multiple times already. We think Andrew Platek is a guy that's better coming off the bench. And as for Leaky Black, I mean, look, some people may say that, why is he in the starting lineup? I think both of us personally believe that, he might be better served as a guy coming off the bench, but he looked good in this game, too. It's back-to-back games that he looked good and he started this game. So you can see that he's starting to gain a little bit of confidence on the offensive end. He hit, the biggest shot of this entire game, and that wasn't an easy shot either. So you can see that, there is some development that is happening from Leaky Black, and it's very encouraging. I think that, there's a lot of different lineups that Carolina can roll out and have success. That's the thing that I think was the most frustrating about those first 2 losses in ACC play, is that we know that this team has a lot of talent. We know that there are a lot that they can put out there and they should be able to score with, but they just haven't. This isn't like last year where there were a lot of times where you were asking yourself, who is the best scoring option right now on the floor? This year, you know that you're going to have at least one big man on the floor that can score the basketball, and you're seeing the emergence of some guys that can shoot the ball from